before roots dug into fertile soil, before fruit trees bent under cultivated harvests, and before any human hand saved a seed for the next season. Earth had already invented food, not food in the human sense. There were no farms, no orchards, no grain fields stretching to the horizon, no selective breeding, no harvest festivals, no markets overflowing with produce. And yet for hundreds of millions of years, the planet was covered with structures that stored energy, protected embryos, and nourished ecosystems. Seeds packed with oils, cones filled with starch-rich tissues, primitive fruits wrapped around developing life, underground organs swollen with reserves. These were nature's first foods. They were never planted, never harvested, never tasted by human beings, and most of them are gone forever. To understand the true origin of food, it is necessary to look far beyond agriculture and even beyond humanity itself, to a time when the land was almost barren. More than 470 million years ago, life on Earth was still largely confined to the oceans. The continents were exposed expanses of rock and sediment. There were no forests, no flowers, and no grasses. The first plants to colonize this hostile world were tiny and simple, resembling modern mosses and liverworts. They hugged damp surfaces and depended entirely on water. They had no roots in the modern sense, no seeds, and no structures that could be considered food reserves. Their reproduction relied on spores, microscopic packets released into the air. A spore was durable, but it carried little nourishment. Its success depended on landing in exactly the right environment. Still, these pioneers transformed the planet. They helped form the earliest soils. They captured carbon dioxide. They altered weathering processes. And over millions of years, they prepared Earth for larger and more complex vegetation. Then evolution made one of its most consequential inventions, the seed. Around 360 million years ago, during the late Devonian period, some plants began enclosing their embryos within protective tissues containing stored nutrients. This changed everything. A seed was more than a reproductive structure. It was a concentrated package of life and food. The embryo rested at its center. Around it lay tissues rich in carbohydrates, proteins, and oils. Around that, protective coverings shielded the whole structure from desiccation, damage, and time. Unlike spores, seeds could wait. They could survive droughts, cold periods, and transport over long distances. When conditions improved, they germinated with enough internal resources to establish a young plant. In effect, seeds were the first true portable food reserves on land. They were compact, efficient, and revolutionary. The earliest seed plants belonged to groups unlike anything alive today. Among the most important were seed ferns, or pteridosperms. Their leaves resembled ferns, broad and delicate, but their reproductive strategy was entirely different. Attached to these fronds were seeds sometimes surrounded by cup-like tissues. These structures may have protected the developing embryo, and in some species may have contained nutrient-rich material. To modern eyes, they might appear as primitive relatives of nuts or fruiting bodies. For tens of millions of years, seed ferns spread across the world. They were among the first plants to turn reproduction into a sophisticated system of protection and stored energy. They were also among the first to disappear. By the Carboniferous period, beginning about 359 million years ago, the Earth had become a world of immense swamp forests. Towering club moss relatives such as lepidodendron rose more than 30 meters high. Giant horsetails formed dense stands along riverbanks. Tree ferns spread broad canopies overhead. The air contained more oxygen than today. Warmth and humidity filled the atmosphere. The ground was saturated, and layers of plant debris accumulated in thick peat deposits that would eventually become coal. Within these forests, plants manufactured enormous quantities of biological material. Leaves, spores, seeds, and reproductive tissues fed insects, amphibians, and other early animals. Some of the largest insects ever to exist flew through these ancient wetlands. Dragonflies with wingspans exceeding 60 centimeters hunted above the vegetation. The Carboniferous forests were among the most productive ecosystems in Earth's history, and hidden among their foliage were the earliest food structures that foreshadowed everything humanity would later depend upon. As the Carboniferous gave way to the Permian, the continents collided to form Pangaea. This altered global climates dramatically. Interior regions became drier and more seasonal. The vast swamp forests began to contract. Many plant groups vanished. Others adapted. Conifers diversified. Evolving seeds protected within woody cones. Ginkgo relatives spread across broad regions. And cycads emerged as one of the most remarkable plant groups of their age. Cycads are often mistaken for palms because of their stout trunks and crowns of stiff leaves, but they belong to a much older lineage. Their reproductive structures were massive cones packed with seeds. Some seeds were enclosed in brightly colored outer layers rich in starch. Modern cycads still preserve this ancient design. In some cultures, their seeds have been processed as food after careful detoxification. But cycads also contain potent toxins. Without preparation, they can be dangerous. This dual nature makes them a reminder that ancient food structures evolved for plant survival, not for human convenience. The world was changing, and change on Earth can be catastrophic. About 252 million years ago, the Permian-Triassic extinction reshaped life, more severely than any event before or since. Massive volcanic eruptions released enormous quantities of greenhouse gases. Global temperatures soared, oceans acidified, ecosystems collapsed, most marine species disappeared, and terrestrial communities were devastated. Many plant lineages vanished forever, but life persisted. The Triassic world that followed was transformed. Among its dominant plants were conifers, cycads, ginkgo relatives, and an enigmatic group known as benedictalians. Benedictalians resembled cycads, but produced unusually complex reproductive structures. Some were arranged in patterns that superficially resembled flowers. These structures enclose seeds within layered tissues that may have attracted insects or small vertebrates. Scientists debate how these plants interacted with ancient ecosystems, but their fossils suggest that evolution repeatedly experimented with food-like structures long before true flowers and fruits appeared. For more than 100 million years, benedictalians thrived. Then they disappeared, leaving no living descendants. Their story survives only in stone. During the Jurassic period, Earth became a vast green world. Conifers towered overhead. Cycads and benedictalians filled the understory. Ferns and horsetails carpeted the ground. Dinosaurs moved through these forests, consuming immense amounts of vegetation. Some browsed on leaves, others likely fed on seeds, cones, and nutrient-rich tissues. Small mammals and insects exploited the same resources. The chemistry of these plants was often complex. Defensive compounds deterred many consumers while allowing specialized relationships to evolve. Food was already an ecological currency, exchanged between plants and animals millions of years before agriculture. Then, around 140 million years ago, another innovation transformed life on land. Flowering plants appeared. Angiosperms enclosed their seeds within ovaries that matured into fruits. This was a profound evolutionary breakthrough. Instead of exposing seeds directly, plants protected them inside specialized structures that could also attract dispersal agents. Early fruits were likely small, tough, and chemically sophisticated. They were not necessarily sweet. Some may have been bitter or fibrous, but they were extraordinarily effective. Animals consumed them and carried their seeds to new environments. This partnership accelerated plant diversification. The world began to fill with an unprecedented range of forms. Colors intensified, textures varied, chemical compositions diversified. Nature was conducting one of the greatest experiments in the history of food. Some lineages gave rise to magnolias, laurels, and early relatives of modern fruit-bearing plants. Others disappeared entirely. The fossil record reveals flowers and fruits unlike anything alive today. Evolution explored possibilities far beyond the narrow selection familiar to modern agriculture. Around these plants, insects co-evolved with flowers. Birds and mammals fed on fruits. Seed dispersal networks became increasingly intricate. Entire ecosystems were organized around the exchange of nourishment for mobility. But as always, Earth remained unstable. 66 million years ago, an asteroid struck near what is now the Yucatan Peninsula. The impact unleashed global fires, earthquakes, and atmospheric darkness. Sunlight diminished. Photosynthesis faltered. Food webs collapsed. Many plant species disappeared along with the non-avian dinosaurs. Pollen records reveal abrupt changes. In some regions, forests were replaced temporarily by fern-dominated landscapes. Spores allowed ferns to recolonize devastated ground rapidly, acting as botanical first responders after catastrophe. Eventually, surviving flowering plants diversified into the ancestors of modern ecosystems. Every apple, grain, berry, and vegetable grown today descends from lineages that endured these repeated upheavals, yet they represent only a tiny fraction of what once existed. The fossil record hints at a far richer botanical history. Paleobotanists reconstruct this world from leaves pressed into shale, fossil wood, pollen grains, and mineralized seeds. Some specimens preserve microscopic anatomy in astonishing detail. Cell patterns reveal developmental processes. Seed coverings show how embryos were protected. Comparisons with living plants help infer relationships, but many extinct groups have no true modern counterpart. Their chemistry remains largely unknown. Their textures can only be guessed. Their flavors are forever inaccessible. What remains are structures, forms, and possibilities. The deeper this history is explored, the more extraordinary it becomes. Modern agriculture relies on a remarkably small subset of plant diversity. A handful of grasses supply most of humanity's calories. A limited number of fruits and vegetables dominate global production. Yet Earth has produced countless plant lineages, each representing a different solution to survival. Some extinct plants may have generated nutrient-rich seeds unlike any grain alive today. Others may have produced fleshy tissues containing novel compounds. Some could have possessed medicinal properties. Others may have been too toxic for most organisms. Their extinction closed pathways that can never be reopened. This reveals a profound truth. Civilization depends not only on human ingenuity, but also on evolutionary survival. Wheat exists because grasses survived ancient climate shifts. Maize exists because flowering plants endured asteroid impacts. Potatoes exist because certain lineages persisted, while innumerable others vanished. Human history is rooted in a botanical lottery conducted over hundreds of millions of years. Nature's first foods were not designed for us. They evolved to nourish embryos, attract dispersers, and outcompete rivals. But in doing so, they laid the foundation for every future harvest. The grains in a field, the fruit in an orchard, and the seeds stored in a granary all trace their ancestry to innovations that arose in worlds without humans. Those worlds were immense. Swamp forests beneath oxygen-rich skies, Jurassic landscapes filled with cycads and conifers, Cretaceous ecosystems where the first fruits appeared among dinosaurs and early birds. Each was a chapter in a much longer story, a story of experimentation, adaptation, extinction, and survival. When a fossil seed is split from stone, it reveals more than a preserved structure. It captures a moment when an ancient plant invested resources into the future. An embryo was enclosed, nutrients were stored, protection was built. The intention of life was the same then as it is now: to endure. The parent plant is gone. Its ecosystem has vanished. Its climate no longer exists, but the seed remains, silent and compressed, carrying evidence of one of evolution's greatest inventions. Nature's first foods remind us that the world was feeding life long before humanity appeared. They show that modern crops are the survivors of an ancient and unpredictable process, and they reveal that beneath every field and orchard lies a hidden history stretching back nearly 500 million years, a history of plants that transformed barren continents into living landscapes, a history of seeds that changed the destiny of life on land, a history of foods that were never cultivated, never harvested, and never tasted by human beings. Yet without them, civilization itself would never have been possible.